13 races at DeRosa at Horse Racing Nation HQ. Mark Midland just across town, but with an army of screens up and ready to handicap these 13 races. Mark, we're not going to go through all 13, and that actually, I think, illustrates the strength of the Horse Racing Nation reports, is you could get a pretty quick survey of maybe what types of opportunities there are on a card of this magnitude using our reports.
Absolutely. And what we want to do today is show you stuff that you're not going to see in the Racing Form or Briss or, any of the other products. We want to show you some tips and some insights that you're not going to get anywhere else. And so I think that's the value of our pro reports, our first timer power ratings, and some of the other things that we're working on.
Absolutely. And certainly we love Briss. They're on our free PPs page. So if you need past performances for the big stakes, they're up there. But we also love going deeper than the PPs. Chris Larmy has a great line in his Bet with the Best podcasts, which actually I think someone else mentioned on his podcast. But if it's in the form, it's in the price. And what HRN Nation reports help you do is maybe find some information that isn't in the form. And there's all sorts of different combinations, and it may depend on the type of race that helps you use a certain type of report. Everything's different. And with the 13 race card, we got maidens, we got turf, we got grade ones, a lot of different pieces of information to get through.
Yeah, I think we got some really good nuggets. So why don't we dive right in and let's see. I'll share the screen on the account. And let's see, let's go to, if you want to take, yeah, there we go. So, okay, so just wanted to show everyone, this is my account for our pro reports and some of the other things that you can subscribe to with Horse Racing Nation. And this is just for Thursday. It just shows you all the different things that you're at your fingertips. You don't necessarily need to look at, let's say, a post-position bias report every day, but you run across a race, you have a question how something plays, it's great to pull up. So just, let's click through these a little bit. And I wanted to look at that. So first of all, just a couple things. Share this one instead here. Our power picks, always available as part of the pro report. Right now, 32% winners overall at Saratoga. It's 34% winners out of the last 100. And you might say, well, that's about the same amount that favorites win. And it is, but these are actually done 3 days in advance. You have this the night before. You have this before you build your, your horizontals and before you plan out your day. And it's hard to predict the favorites that far in advance. So it kind of gives you an idea of some horses that look really good. There's a real high strike rate on that. The shipper report is
on the power pick, just real quick before we get to the shipper. For me personally, I've really tried when it comes to multi-race wagers, or maybe it's a key in a vertical, not hedging or thinking, oh man, I need 3 horses of coverage. And at times the power pick can give you that little nudge where, okay, I'm between 2 horses and shows up favorably on power picks. The other horse doesn't. And knowing that, that 34% strike rate is pretty strong in the long run, I think being able to lean on those type of horses rather than overextending your coverage is a big plus. So that's my biggest use case. It's not necessarily, I need to use all 10 of these top horses. Right. But when I'm between logical contenders, it can be the deciding vote. And I've found success with that.
Absolutely. And a lot of people swear by it. This is the shipper report, and just real quick, this shows you the recent and then last 90 days and then last 3 years track record for horses shipping in, not just the tracks, but also first timers and then the training centers or where the horses are working at. So a couple things, and this is actually for the Thursday card, but horses working at Finger Lakes. They should be winning 1 out of 25 starts. They've won 4 out of 25 starts. So they're greatly outperforming, well-intended if they come down and, they're basically horses that are live and they're not getting bet at all. Similar Parks, the HRN Impact plus 52% over, how they're getting bet on the odds. And then horses with their last race at Finger Lakes, similar thing. And now this is in the last 90 days. plus 13%. So it's something that you can scan every day when you have a horse shipping into a track you're not familiar with. You can kind of take a look at that and just say, well, I wonder if this one is a fit.
And then I would even say when it's great because it covers both ends of the spectrum for me, obviously in familiarity, and we have these for all tracks. You can see Belterra right there before after Saratoga. In this day and age, people are popping in to play carryovers and things like that, so you can get a quick survey of the landscape. But also, if you're intimately aware of the circuit, like Nairo, Saratoga, and guys like Pletcher ship in from Monmouth because they have so many horses. Their horses are there, or maybe they work at Belmont and then run at Saratoga. This helps you get a gauge for those types of move as well, where you're a little deeper in the weeds and aware of that. So this has a wide spectrum of use, whether you're a novice at that particular track or well seasoned. This I find very valuable.
Absolutely. So then let's skip ahead to, I just wanted to share briefly our horses to single report. And what this does is we have an algorithm that points out horses that are good potential singles. Obviously a lot of them are favorites, but it's good to know ones that are leaning in this direction. So last 100 races, our horses single report has picked 50% winners exactly. Last 248% winners. So this is the Thursday card across the country. There's a lot of potential singles out there. And then the quick spoiler for Saturday, there are no singles on this report for the Saratoga Travers card.
Well, they put together a tough card. And then the other thing I would mention with the horses to single, this is a pari-mutuel game. So even if you're not big into I'm not into favorites. I try to beat them more often than not. This is a great way to see where the big favorites on a card are going to be. And maybe you agree, and it's not an opportunity. You pass because you're like, yeah, I get why that horse is even money. I'm not going to bet this race. But occasionally you'll disagree with the report or have your own reasons to come up with an alternative. And knowing that these horses are going to take this kind of money and coming up with a reason to oppose, if that's your game, this is a quick snapshot of where those opportunities might be.
Absolutely. There's so many ways to use this data, especially when you can kind of see the ball beforehand, where it's going, helps you kind of plan things out. So now let's start jumping in a little bit more of the meat. And there's a lot of detail in this report, but this is actually our post-position bias report. We blow that up a little bit. And I've isolated 5.5 furlongs on the turf at Saratoga. And because on the Travers card, race 8 is a full field turf sprint. There's a lot of speed in there. And this is going to be a tough race. It's actually the only full field in the sequence. So in the pick 5 with the Travers, you've got a lot of short fields. And then you've got this full field turf sprint. So it's going to be really key to connecting on your pick 5 through the Travers. So the way to read this report is 5.5 furlongs on the turf at Saratoga. This is the number of starts, 171 over the last couple of years. And this is the percent winners, so 16% winners. And inside you can see post 1, 2, 3 winning 16%, 11%, 19%. But the green highlight is where the HR and impact, they're outperforming their odds. So post 1 and 3 greatly outperforming the odds. If you combine those three, you can see you probably would blend out to maybe 15% winners with a nice positive impact. And then you can just kind of see it almost just drops down in chunks of 3 or 4, post 4, 5, or 6. Now you're down to about 12%, and you're kind of getting a fair odds on those. And then when you get to post 7 through 10, you're really getting into bad posts. Averaging about little less than 7%, very negative impact. So these horses are overvalued. They should be discounted more for those outside posts, end up in a lot of bad trips. And then really interestingly is post 11 and 12. Now there's not as much data. This is only 30 starts, but combined, they actually are all right. So what's that average out to? About 16% winners and some nice positive impact. So maybe the horses on the outside have a little more room to operate, clear the field, stay out of the bumping, stay out of traffic, what have you. But that's something worth noting as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see in 9 or 10 horse fields if the number is a little better when that's the far outside post. Whereas, with 11 or 12 horses, which as you said is 30 races, the 9 and 10 are a little tucked inside versus being on the far outside. And the only way you can have 11 or 12 post is if there are 11 and 12 horses. So they're definitely on the far outside no matter what. And as you noted, especially with 12, it is a small sample size, but still, to me, that sticks out pretty well. That on the far outside, you can do okay, and then that string of red, I think, speaks for itself too. So it's one of those like I'm not looking at this and never using post 8, especially if they're not
Right.
favored and I have other reasons to like, but. Occasionally you'll get horses who are clearly going to take money, and that could be a red flag and a reason to look elsewhere.
Absolutely. So, okay, well, let's jump into the first timer power ratings and share that one instead. And so this is the first race is a 2-year-old maiden, and on the rail we've got Kenny McPeak here with a horse I thought was pretty interesting. It was a 4-star. He had a 3-star winner about a week and a half ago. That was about 9-1. I think it was the opening leg. And this horse is an interesting horse because he's hitting high marks on terms of overall speed, barn, track, take charge Indy. There's this is a sire that can win early, decent enough. He named Luis Saez, who of course won't ride, but I think that was a positive, even though McPeak had used Saez a lot. And for a guy that's not super well known, for first timers, 7% overall. He does have a positive impact, meaning you can get some nice payoffs there. And I'm encouraged by the fact that he won last week. The other thing that I thought was really interesting about this race, and I'm going to pull up my time form PPs for a second here. He actually has the favorite. And so I don't know if you can see that, Ed, but the 2-1 favorite is the 8 on the outside, Wildstib. So Kenny Peak has this horse that he kind of battled along the way and finished second by a neck going 6, but now he stretches him out to 7, and he enters a first timer against it that looks really fast. And the first timer is 8-1. So I almost feel like this horse is potentially going to set it up for the first timer, and it's a chance to get 8-1 instead of 2-1 on this favorite.
It's a great point. I mean, 7 with the fitness is great for Wallsteed, but I mean, I definitely with that pedigree don't necessarily know that any farther is ideal. So to me, that's an immediate question at a short price. And I guess we'll see who ends up riding because it's not going to be Saez as you noted. And McPeak stayed loyal to Alvarado, who rode in the debut, but that definitely speaks volumes that Louis was on the first time starter.
Right. And now it is the first race, so there may be a lot of action if there's a lot of barn knowledge or what have you, but it'd be interesting. But I think the price of a 2-1 morning line favorite that ran well and just missed, we'll keep that price up a little bit. Another thing on the first timer, so there's one other first timer in this race from the Chicali barn. Obviously that barn's not known for first timers, but the first time report really kind of breaks it down for you. So this is a trainer that's 0 for 28 with first timers. The horse isn't fast. We're giving it a 1 out of 5. So, sometimes people get freaked out by first timers, even some of the longer ones. Should I spread? Should I include them all? This can give you a lot of extra confidence to just look at this for what it is, which is a toss.
Yeah, and flat bet profit at the current Saratoga meeting on the 4 and 5-star horses, if you throw out the odds on. Now, obviously, that's I don't think this horse is going to be odds on, so it's definitely in play for that stat. But occasionally, the betting public just way over bets first time starters who are steaming, and we see some who are 1-2, 4-5, and it doesn't matter how many stars they are; those are just bad bets over the long run. But for those that don't take quite that amount of money and actually can pay more than $4, the numbers say that the current Saratoga meeting you'd be ahead, and that's even betting multiple in a race. So to me, that speaks volumes of the power of these numbers. That even when you're Dutching, so to speak, you're still ahead of the game, and they just do a great job of identifying live horses.
Yeah, exactly. And like that, the McPeak horse in the first, unfortunately with the first race, we won't get to bet into it, like, into the blind horizontals, if you will. And it's 8-1 morning line. It may, given some of the things we've identified on the report, it may go off at, let's just say 4-1. So to your point, win or lose, that might be a good bet depending on those odds. But if you had gotten it in a pick 3 or a pick 4, where people are playing it at more as an 8-1 morning line horse, you're getting a lot of value.
Can you scroll up to the efficacy that shows the power over the morning line?
I can't see. I got to jump to it because it's way to the top.
Yeah, you're way down there at Saratoga.
There we go. So, right. So the impact of a 5-star versus the morning line over, basically 2,000 starts is a 35% improvement over the morning line. And so, you're basically talking about, 9-1s that go off at, 6-1, or, however you want to look at it. So the odds are dropping on these. They're still outperforming their odds by about 10%. So, it's identifying the live horses, really. And they're getting bet, and they're actually outperforming the bets even further.
Yeah, great report.
Yeah, it's one of our favorites. So, all right, so let's jump ahead to race 6, and I just wanted to show. Not sure if you're used to it, but on Timeform, it's easy to see. There's 7 first timers, and then the 2, and 3, and the 10 have run. But the interesting thing here. So Colonial Rose for Al Stahl ran a nice second, got a pretty big number on a Timeform scale. Was 15-1 first time out, and I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 stars, but I bet it. Had a little trouble in the race. It was really kind of frustrating, unlucky second in a deep field of 2-year-olds. But because there's a good number here, and because the 10 has a decent number, that's actually taken into account with the other 7 firsters. So when we do our first timer report, the algorithm looks at the strength of the field and who they're up against. And so if a horse was in this race and scratched and ran back the next day in a weaker field, it would actually potentially have a much higher rating on the first time power report.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So let's jump to the race itself, and just gotta find it real quick. Okay. So here's the details of race 6, and there's a few interesting things to look at. Bobby Falcone has a horse that's moderately fast. Not a huge history of winning with first timers, but still 9%, 13% at Saratoga with one that paid a nice price. I'm not a big fan of Run Happy first time out. They win 10%, but this big negative 17% and minus 34%. What that means is they're just underperforming. And one of the things I've kind of noticed, and talked to Mattress Mac and love Run Happy overall, but they tend to work fast before their debut. They tend to be good workers, and so they tend to get bet, and then they're just 9 and 10% overall first time out. So they run okay, but they're bet like they're going to run great, and they run. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So you're not really getting, in my opinion, what you see in the works. So those are ones I tend to fade, really based on that number, that minus 34. And then number 4, Shoplifting for Dutrow. This is a horse that's got a lot of nice works, looks fast, And these are the tough ones, right? 1 for 26 at Saratoga. Again, these are even more negative. So, it's kind of hard to support first timers out of this barn. And then skipping ahead, there's a couple Chad Browns in here that look pretty good. This one we gave a 4-star rating on the 5 horse. Kind of overall some good numbers, but nothing great. Flavian Pratt's up, which is obviously a great sign. But in Practical Joke, dirt sprinting, this is his game. First time sire dirt sprint, 20%. Overall dirt sprint, 19%. Definitely in the wheelhouse. So this isn't a turf horse for Chad. This is a dirt sprinter. Maybe this is one you watch the board on, but I'm not like super excited about it. You're looking ahead in the horizontals.
Yeah, and I believe this is part of a middle pick 4.
Correct.
So
the one that really interested me was the Todd Pletcher. The 6 Cowgirl Charm gets a 5-star rating. You can see, a lot of green for Todd here. Overall, the horse is working fast. He's also working fast for the Pletcher barn. I should say she. And the works are kind of getting incrementally faster. Good connections with Johnny V. Just a lot of positives here. This to me has the look of one that's going to be ready. And if I was going to pick one to single on. And the other thing, back to what I talked about in the beginning about the Al Stall horse Colonial Rose has some really nice form. The fact that our algorithms rating this as a 5-star against that horse's speed figures is basically saying this one has still has potential to outdo that one.
Yeah, and I believe, and this is something we've talked about, maybe next level for second time starts. I believe Colonial Rose was a 4 or 5-star on debut.
Yeah.
Because I remember using, and there's no way I would have, as much as I love Leparoux, I wouldn't have unless it was 4 or 5 stars. So, clearly showed something going into that start and now comes back. But at 7-2 against, as you noted, some others who are still rating favorably with those fast figures up there is certainly interesting.
Yeah, I'm really going to key in, I think, the 6 and the 2. Colonial Rose with any improvement. Also, if you watch the replay, it had a little bit of trouble in a couple spots. Did a lot of running in the middle of the race. And I think it was a pretty salty field. So not too many of them have run back yet. But and then just kind of going forward, there's a Wayne Catalano in here that looks okay. This is interesting that he's 15% at Saratoga. And he's 15% dirt sprinting, but initial look didn't see anything that popped there. And then we've got another Chad. The other Chad was a 4-star. This one's a 3-star. Now the 3 stars definitely win, as you may have seen when we had the stats up earlier. So they're not out of consideration. It's just they're further down sort of the pecking order from some of the others.
Yeah, that's one of those, for me, if there's other things I like and it looks like maybe a favorite's vulnerable, a 3-star can be in the mix. But, clearly the numbers show the 4 and 5 as you would expect win more. I will say on Here's Your Trouble, all 3 starters out of the dam won at 2. So for those who are into that, 2-year-old form in the family, she checks that box for sure.
Yeah, that's a great note. And then just to round out the field, there's a Mott here. It's a Justify. It's not working that fast, but Motts, a lot of times don't. 8% at Saratoga. Obviously, he can win. And then, the Justifies, again, just like Practical Jokes, but even more so. This is their game. 25% first time out dirt sprinting, 24% overall dirt sprinting. So, and we're going to talk about that Justifies for a minute in a minute on the sire moves, but this is definitely their game. So I don't know, a ton of information and the first time power report. I use it every day. I know you do as well, Ed.
Absolutely. And again, that report includes, Saratoga is popular, big 2-year-old races on Travers Day, but every debut runner in the United States and Canada gets a rating. every day.
Okay, and then just wanted to switch to let's share this down. The Sire Moves report, which is another great report, and there's 4 horses I wanted to pull out and just kind of show on the Travers card. So at the top here, Saratoga 1, awesome for sure, 10-1. This horse debuted over the synthetic at Gulfstream, kind of got a slow start, and then kind of ran a little bit at 5 furlongs, and now stretches out to 7. It's not the toughest field in the world. There's about 6 that have run, and this one is sort of in the bottom range of those that have figures. But so I'm not recommending it as a play on top necessarily, and maybe not a play at all, but it's worth noting, if you're looking exactas and trifectas, this is a horse that was running late at 5. He's going to 7, but if we look at the Awesome Slews, his last was a synthetic sprint. They're 11% winners on the synthetic sprint. Atrium Impact is pretty flat. Now they're 21% winners on a dirt sprint. So he's now a 2nd-time starter. He's coming off trouble. He's getting 2 more furlongs, and this is what he's bred for. So there's a lot of potential for improvement. Okay, and then Champion's Dream is in the 4th race, outside horse. I just want to show the PPs on this a little bit. This horse was in the Cassie barn, and he's now moved to Danny Gargan. And I don't know if you can see that. I'll just kind of highlight, but this horse won its maiden at Saratoga, 5th in the Champagne against Blazing Sevens in the slop. He won the Nashua Grade 3 at a mile, and then he just missed in a January 3-year-old stake at Tampa. Then they stretch him out to 2 turns, and it was just a disaster. Sam Davis was a disaster. Tampa was a disaster. But he's a Justified, and we saw how great they are in dirt sprint. So if we go back to the Sire Moves report, and there he is at the top, Champion's Dream. So Justify on a dirt route is an 8% winner, but they're minus 53% on impact. So they're basically winning half as many races as they should. Very much disappointing in a dirt route. And that's what we just saw in the PPs. Now he comes back in a dirt sprint. This is the Justify wheelhouse. They win triple the rate at 24%. So there's a lot more that goes into it than that. I just wanted to kind of point out this is the information you may not have. Everyone else can, dig into the workouts, Danny Gargan's record off layoffs, and all the other things and the pace and that go into it. But this is the kind of thing that could put you on a horse that's 6-1 that could fit very well in this race.
Yeah, and to your point, you mentioned earlier, it's in vogue to look at the pick ends, but vertically having a horse like this, that can improve and be 2nd or 3rd. If you're willing to be against some of the shorter prices as well, it has utility. So these reports aren't just all for, hey, give me the winner. It's who can outrun their odds, to borrow our former colleague saying, and crash any number of different types of wagers and make the most of it.
Yeah, and maybe the difference between keeping this horse on the ticket or
Exactly.
tossing it, whether it's an A or B or whatever. So, okay, and then real quick, skipping ahead to the sprint stake, verifying, again, the Justify theme. In the Indiana Derby, it was a dirt route. It was an off track, 8%, pretty much the same as dirt routes, whether fast or wet. Going back to a dirt sprint. So I'm not a really big fan of verifying, but he should perform better. This is a better spot for him. I don't necessarily like him against some of these others in here, but again, it's just wanted to point out some of the opportunities and how the report works.
And I think too, when I see information, for me, it's okay, understanding, the animal and maybe where the form cycle is going. This might be too tough for him. Right. And when he shows up in the PPs again, people might say, oh, why are they trying to sprint? He's a grade 2 winner around 2 turns. He almost won the Bluegrass, but the pedigree clearly, or at least would justify on top, says, hey, this has a chance to be more his game. So if you have that in the back of your mind
Right.
and you forgive the fifth behind some really fast horses, I'm looking at the Ragozin sheets right now.
Mm-hmm.
There is some legitimate grade one talent in here, and it's not verifying. But you give him a mulligan and he comes back, maybe it's a 1 turn mile, the ACAC, maybe he runs in that at Churchill, who
Yeah.
knows? But
And maybe that's what the connections are doing, right?
right. You just get it. You're going to get a better price because you're going to draw a line through this. And I think most of the public, if it's in the form, it's in the price applies to underlays too, just as much. So what's in the form is, that wasn't a very good Jerkins. Why are they trying 1 turn again? And he gets overlooked. But,
Yeah.
this field's just incredible. But with this in the back of your mind, you can still put it to use this race, next race, etc.
I love that. I love that. You're right, because there's a couple in here that I think are Breeders' Cup Sprint types, and the connections. I think with verifying, he was what 3 to 5 in the Indiana Derby. He's life and death to hold on by a head bob, and I think he's sort of been disappointing in that regard. So you're right. Like maybe he runs really strong for a half here, and you're really impressed by the winners or the top couple, and if he finishes halfway up the track. But you're right, he could show up in the ACAC or something else in the fall, and you could catch a nice price. Okay, and then lastly in race 13, Fly Right, 3-1. Just move that to the top there. So this is an Astern. Kind of seen a lot of Asterns that they do really well in turf sprinting. They're not quite as good at turf routing. So here we see turf routing's 10%, but even worse at dirt routes. So, and this horse's PPs, he's been running in turf routes. They switched him to a dirt route that just, the result was not good. 4% winners dirt route, minus 70% impact. So that could have been anticipated. Now everyone can see that this horse is going to go back to his turf route form, which is pretty good, and you can see he's 3-1 on the morning line, but he's actually even shortening up, and so he's shortening up from a little bit longer races on the turf. And I just wanted to point that out, that not only do you get the positive move back to turf, but the Asterns seem to do better at turf sprinting, so perhaps getting a little shorter will give him even further improvement.
Yeah, and this was a horse they put in a graded stakes as a maiden, and actually took a little bit of money, 8-1 in an 11-horse field. Didn't work out that day on the front end, but and it really hasn't worked out since. But things are maybe conspiring in his direction on Saturday for sure.
Yeah, and then just to wrap up, we just wanted to note that the super screener that Mike Shuddy puts together is just a whale of great information in there. This is the early version where the Thursday and Friday stakes are in here, and the Travers, but there's going to be every stake on Saturday will be covered, plus there may be some others from around the country. It usually covers about 6 stakes around the country every week, if not more, 6 to 8. And if you're not familiar with the super screener, it's great. It goes through some really super analysis. Mike looks at a lot of different things. The speed figures, the energy distribution, maps out the pace, replays all those things, and comes into pace setup, the playability of the race, wagering strategies, and how to use different horses in each race. So just an amazing tool. If you subscribe to the Super Screener, you get it every weekend, and it's just the biggest races and some of the biggest opportunities. So it's a great tool.
Yeah, and this is one of those reports, there's sort of something for everyone on our reports page. But, if you just want picks, Mike's got you covered, whether it's picks or how to bet those picks. He does both. But if you're looking to learn as well, the analysis is just invaluable because, he takes you through his process. And, maybe that's not your process and that's fine, but just thinking about how other handicappers think about a race and learning from that is huge. And you'd buy a book to do that. He does it every week with these stakes races. So must read. And with our deal now, you get it through the Breeders' Cup every weekend, and we have a handy dandy graphic illustrating that.
Nice.
So yeah, hit up picks.horseracing.com. Candace, our colleague with the marketing and direct mailing, does a great job keeping everyone informed on all the different things you get with your Super Screener subscription, including Power Picks and Horses to Single, which we went over earlier. And it's just a lot of information week to week, culminating in the Breeders' Cup. So get involved.
Yeah, great stuff. Super Screener, every weekend, use that. Wouldn't play the races without it. It's invaluable information. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video and to the channel so you don't miss anything, any of the good information we've got coming in the future, especially as we get into the Breeders' Cup preps and Breeders' Cup itself.
Yeah, Delmar next week, so maybe we'll twist Shuddy's arm to come from behind the pen and get on camera for the big race in his backyard. Well, Mark, we couldn't let all this go without a Travers pick. It is the big race of the day, after all.
What do you got?
I got Mage. I'm extremely bullish. I'm believing the prep. I think the connections, which those of us who are sort of in the weeds and cover the big races, every horse we're familiar with, the Gunnevera days and things like that. And I've always felt they have been sort of forthcoming about how they train horses and what their plans are. So I'm believing that it was just a prep. That race does not win this. But the goal was to use that race to win this. So he does have to improve. But we've seen what he can do in the Derby. I wasn't a believer that day, so I missed the wedding. Hopefully this isn't the funeral, but at 4-1, I'm in.
All right. Fair enough. So I like Mage a lot. I think he's going to be my second pick here. I'm kind of kicking myself after the last weekend, and I went back and I looked at the Travers charts, and Arrogate, West Coast, Catholic Boy, Wire to Wire, Central Quality, Epicenter. They were kind of like horse of the year types, or maybe actually were pretty close to the pace. He closed. So the last 6 that were non-COVID, we've got 3 wire to wire types and a couple close to the pace types. And the reason I mentioned last weekend is, I was busy last weekend. I didn't spend as much time, but I know that that's the profile for the King's Plate and the Alabama. These mile and quarter races, you get to the front, you don't stop. And
Yep.
I'm going Scotland, baby. I'm going William Wallace here.
All right.
I think if you look at, and an interesting thing, you look at Arcangelo, he had 4 good races and then threw into the big boys, and he jumped up. And if you look at Scotland's first 4 races compared to Arcangelo's first 4 races, it's kind of the same thing, maybe even a little better.
Good comparison.
So I'm going to take a little bit of shot that, blinkers are coming off National Treasure. Maybe they're trying to do something. Maybe they just don't want to send. I mean, it seemed like National Treasure was always originally sort of that pace presser type, where Cave Rock, was the speed horse and juvenile, and National Treasure was coming off it. But I think if Scotland gets in front of these, I don't think he's stopping. Maybe one of these talented runners will nip him for the exacta, but it's a big price, so I'm going all in.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off. I agree. I mean, I ended up going with the other Cassie on top, but I thought the one who won was my second pick, and thinking, well, if he gets loose, he's gone. And certainly that's in play here. It'll be interesting to see what Johnny V does with National Treasure. That's sort of the key with the blinkers coming off, and obviously for my betting purposes, hoping it's spirited enough that Mage gets that kick now under Flavian Pratt with Luis Saez convalescing. But
yeah,
to me, the personal ensign, like these are the races that you want to see. No one is missing from this Travers, and hope it lives up to the hype.
Yeah, can't wait. It's going to be awesome. All right, well, this has been great. Thanks everybody for joining us, and good luck Travers Day, and let's pick some winners.
Make some money.
All right.